There is a general impression in the Muslim world that this war on terror is not a war on terror, it's a war on Islam. How would you respond to those who are under this impression?
I would not maybe use the word war on Islam, but I would emphasize the fact that the war on terror is largely based on the ostracization, the stigmatization of Muslim population. On specific things such as the headscarf, such as the way male and female relate to each other in the Muslim tradition, such as the way specific family wants to socialize and educate their kids. So there are points of stigmatization that are really recurring in the European history in the last 2 decades. And I think the headscarf controversies and the stigmatization in particular of the female bodies is of the Muslim European population is quite striking in that respect. So I would say that it's the denunciation, the stigmatization of Islam is part of the war on terror, but not as a project, as an outcome. And this outcome has become really, really central in the life of Muslims in the European Union.
And what do you think? What measures needs to be taken by the Western world to dispel this impression that this is not a war on terror, or this war on terror is not actually a war on Islam?
I think what is actually we have conducted a study for the Open Society Institute that is comparing 11 cities in the European Union and across Europe. And out of this study, what is remarkable is that Muslims that are being interviewed and are explicitly saying that they feel at home in Europe, that they feel well. Mm-hmm. They feel well in their neighborhood, they relate well to the public services, and they feel really at home. The world is that one. But when you look at the way they speak about what is problematic to them, then you realize that there is a lack of interaction, there is a lack of recognition of their specific suffering between Muslim and non-Muslim, between public authorities and Muslim populations. Mm-hmm. So I think there would be a need to emphasize and insist on the necessity to interact more directly between policy decision and the Muslim population.
Right. So do you know there is a general impression that the major player in the war on terror is the United States, right? And Europeans, in terms of participation, they don't have much participation as compared to United States. So why do you think there is more radicalization in Europe as compared to United States, as David said today?
I would not say that Europe has not its part to play in the war on terror. Actually, the UK and Spain really followed up what the US decided in the immediate aftermath of the 9/11 events. So I would not say that Europe is that marginal, but Europe has its own history, its own past to relate to its Muslim population that is based on history of colonialism, that is based on a history of migration, that is completely looking at a different population and has also a different foreign policy. And to that respect, I think the national trajectories are still very important in the European Union. European Union per se is not yet a sufficient significant foreign policy actor. So I think we still have to conceive this discussion in terms of diplomacy and relation to the states, in particular in the war on terror, as the affair of national states first. Second, I'm not sure that the way this war on terror has been thematized in North America reflects exactly what has happened in Europe. In Europe, we have a long history of dealing with terrorism. We didn't wait up to 9/11 to discover Islamic terrorism and potential risks that were carried out by specific networks. So there is a tradition of knowledge, a tradition of policy action, policy activities, and we cannot just decide that everything will follow up the leadership or the role model that the states want to play in this game. And last thing, the Muslim population in Europe is very well aware of that. It's very well informed and politicized. So I'm not that willing to compare and to consider that there is a symmetry between the states, what's happening from the leadership of the states and from the leadership of Europe.
Right. So do you anticipate, are there any chances of attacks like London or Madrid again in Europe? As you know, there are some fears here in the United States expressed by even US officials that 9/11 type attack could happen again. So do you think like still are there any chances over there? And
I'm
how
not-
to prevent them, you know?
I'm not a prophet, so I cannot answer to your question by saying on that day there will be this specific event. What I think is happening in Europe is a real radicalization of the national identities versus any type of differences, in particular the Muslim ones. So what I see happening is a kind of strengthening of reciprocal representations in negative terms. And this nationalization of identities is, according to me, very, very scary and very dangerous if you come to think about what could come out of it. Because what could come out of a permanent representation that is stigmatizing the same population, Muslims, could be extremely negative for anyone. So I would not phrase it in terms of terrorist attack, but really invite people to be more careful, in particular politicians, in the way they phrase their statement about Muslims, in the way they continue to prorogate and to perpetrate a systematic alienation of these populations just by the fact of speaking badly and negatively about it.
How would you advise to the Muslim community, if we talk about Europe, how could they address the concerns those are in the minds of European officials or governments or law enforcement officials, you know? How could they prove that, you know, how could they take off the fears from their minds, you know?
Actually, it's difficult to speak in the name of Muslims. We are facing very different situations from the UK to France, Belgium, the Netherlands. I mean, national contexts are very different. The sensitivity is completely differently defined. So I wouldn't say that there is a common ecology or common economy of what Muslim population should do. What is for me obvious from the fieldwork we've been conducting is that the Muslim leadership should be more engaging with policymakers locally that again should be engaging themselves. So this reciprocal continuous conversation should start and should start on a daily basis, on a very regular basis, and according to me it had not yet started.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So nice.